Istanbul, Turkey is today's origin, and I'll be testing out Turkish Airlines A330 business class to Europe. Let's find out if this is the most comfortable option for getting to Frankfurt, Germany. Hello, YouTube travelers, and welcome to the Gentleman of Fortune channel. Join me on my travels around the world, and together we'll review the latest in-flight and lounge offerings, find out how various airlines' first and business class products stack up, and sample their catering and indulge in their finest champagnes. Together, we'll experience the best of the best, and maybe some more obscure ones as well. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss a thing. And now I invite you to sit back and relax as we get this next review underway. So I've made it through the several layers of security with my digital boarding pass on my mobile phone, and I'm now inside the beautiful Istanbul airport terminal. In lieu of the IGA lounge, which is the only other lounge option in Istanbul airport, and which gets very crowded, today I have access to Turkish Airlines business class lounge. And I think I'm going to start off this morning with a nice strong coffee. The Turkish Airlines Business Class Lounge is an expansive space which overlooks the terminal and offers great views of all the activity down below. Scattered throughout the lounge are a number of live cooking stations, as well as food and drink buffet options. The lounge features the renowned Dough & Co. catering. After getting sufficiently caffeinated and filling my belly, it was time to head to the gate. Here we see the Airbus A330 that's going to take me to Frankfurt today. Of note, Turkish Airlines has several frequencies on this route, but some of them are operated by the smaller Airbus 320 series. And here's a first look around the business class cabin on today's flight. As you can see, the cabin furnishings are slightly dated in a 222 configuration. However, this is significantly better than most of the options intra-Europe in the smaller Airbus and 737s with just a blocked middle seat. The first thing we'll take a look at is the tray table, which pulls out from the center console. As you can see, it's a little bit tricky to get it out correctly, but once it's in the right position, it affords a nice workspace or dining space, and it can pivot and move forward and aft, which allows a little bit of freedom of movement for the passengers who can get out of the seat if they so desire. At the shoulder level, there's a personal reading light, and below that you have the remote control for the IFE. This small button underneath here allows you to release and deploy the controller. Unfortunately, on today's flight, there was a problem with my IFE in my particular seat, so it wasn't particularly useful. Down beneath the armrest, you've got the universal power outlet. And moving forward, you've got a nice storage compartment here underneath the ottoman. Today's flight is fairly short at just about 3.5 hours, and it is intra-European, so it's pretty impressive to me that they actually have a nice printed menu. As I was busy perusing the menu, I was offered a welcome drink, and I selected the refreshing mint and lemon beverage. As an A330, this is a fairly large aircraft, so the boarding process is continuing, which gives us some time to look at the headphones that they provide you in business class. Here you can see that they're better than something you'd get in economy, but they're not the greatest. But they're not going to prove to be of any use today anyway, because as I mentioned earlier, there was a problem with the IFE. As you can see from the screen, it just continually refreshes. It's impossible to select anything. Eventually, the boarding process was completed, the doors were closed, we were pushed back, and we began our taxi out to the runway. Taxiing around Istanbul Airport provides the avid plane spotter with an eclectic assortment of aircraft and airlines from the Middle East, Central Asia, and Europe. Unfortunately for me, on this particular flight, I offered up my seat to a woman so that she could sit with her traveling companion, which moved me away from my window seat, which I had pre-selected. So I'm going to have to kind of shoot across the legs of my new neighbor in order to see out of the windows here for the taxi and takeoff. This airport is fairly large with a lot of traffic, which means that the taxi time to the end of the runway takes quite a while. Fortunately, it's significantly more comfortable than your typical business class in Europe. Eventually, we make it to the end of the runway, and after a little bit more waiting, we're finally allowed to take the runway and begin our takeoff roll, destination Frankfurt, Germany. And here we go. After takeoff, the flight attendant offered me a blanket, and the cabin temperature was fairly comfortable, so I thought, well, maybe I'll try it out and get a little bit cozy since I was thinking I might sleep, especially considering that the IFE didn't seem to work. I was also offered a refreshing towel. Eventually, the seatbelt sign was turned off, and I thought I'd get up and use the lavatory to actually wash my hands properly before the meal service began. As you can see, it was outfitted with some nice fragrances and some toiletries. Shortly after I returned to my seat, the meal service began. It was served on a single tray with the appetizer plate prominently displayed there. I find the food presentation and quality to be pretty good, especially considering the length of the flight. After the initial trays were dropped off, the flight attendant came around with a bread basket with a variety of types of bread. Once I had finished my appetizer, the main plate was brought out, and I elected to go with this kebab. This was also tasty. And here's something else that's cute that caught my eye. The salt and pepper shakers, which are in the shape of little minarets. A little bit later in the flight, after the meal service, the flight attendant came around and offered some mixed nuts. Now here's a look at the seat converted into a bed. There were no linens other than the blanket which the flight attendant provided, but it was still very comfortable. The seat itself is actually slightly inclined, although it's barely noticeable, so it's technically not a flatbed, but it's miles more comfortable than any other seat I think you're going to find on an intra-Europe business class, save maybe ITA or somebody. I was successful in getting a little bit of sleep. Before too long, it was time to arrive in Frankfurt. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Turkish Airlines has multiple frequencies a day on this routing, and presumably to other routes in Europe. This one is one of the few that has the A330 on it, with the others being served by the A320 series. So obviously, take a look at that if you're trying to get this product, because you may not find that on those other aircraft. Well, this was a fairly short flight, so it warrants a fairly short video. I hope that you still enjoyed what you saw, and if you did, that you don't mind giving me a like and hit subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, until the next adventure, safe travels.